Hello. So I was led by another targeted individual. Her name's Talon Godfrey, if anyone watches her stuff, to research total individual control technology. So I was looking into that this morning, and it's fascinating when people talk about V2K, and you kind of think about hearing voices, don't you? But the technology that they have is so much more than that. And it really putting in that total individual control technology into a search engine, it was really eye-opening for me to get a description from whistleblowers that have blown the whistle on companies that use this technology, about organisations that have the use of this technology and then put it into play, i.e. gang stalking. That's what they use to gang stalk people. I found it really, really interesting. It was a real eye-opener. It's really validating for me, because it goes into a lot of the things that I've experienced and that I've talked about without really knowing that this technology exists, But it really, I love it when things like that happens, because it kind of validates what you're saying, and makes you feel, I don't ever think I'm crazy. I know I'm not crazy, I think a lot of people would maybe disagree that I'm crazy, but I'm definitely not. I'm a bit unhinged at times, but not crazy. But it's really, it always makes me feel good, when I can come across examples of what I'm saying being realistic, And it got me thinking about my environment, and the way that they put things in my environment. And as part of this technology, if you read it, if you just put total individual control technology into a search engine, and you'll come up with lots of websites describing this kind of technology and what they use it for, how they can use it, how it can manipulate you, how it can control you entirely. I mean, but by its name, total individual control. But I was thinking about my environment, and the fact that they've kind of got me locked down in a maze, if you like, a kind of rat run. They've got me, I'm like a rat in a maze, and they control my entire environment. That's why they want you to live in specific places. And if they don't engineer you living in a place that I live here because economically, I don't have a job, so I'm kind of out of options as far as choices on places to live. So they manufactured it that I would live here, and they had all the things set up in my environment already, or they have had them set up since I've been here, and you'll probably be the same if you haven't been forced into the living environment that you're in. Then it's probably not been your own decision to be that. Maybe you think it was, but it was probably something that was put into your mind, and you just think you're in that environment through choice. But they've kind of mapped out your whole environment, including your living quarters. So when you walk into a room, they're mapping your eyes. They're listening to everything that you hear. So the sounds that you're picking up on, they're aware that you're picking up on them by your eye movements, by slight eye movements, by slight movements that you're unaware of. So they'll map out your environment. If you walk into a specific room and your gaze goes into a certain, I don't like doing that because you can see my double chin. Your gaze will go in a certain direction, and then they know to put things in that direction. If I walk quite a lot, so they'll, in bits where the ground is quite slippery or the path is uneven, they'll put products on the ground, because I'm more likely to be looking down at the ground at those points. So they'll place products, bits of litter, etc., that are really relevant to my life, to my situation in these specific spots. They've mapped out my entire environment, so they're watching through my eyes at certain places. If I cross this road, what way that I'm likely to gaze in, what way I'm likely to look in, the direction that I'm looking in. So then in the future, they can engineer putting things in the direction that my gaze is going in. They'll also put people in your environment, brightly coloured clothing, the oranges, the yellows, the reds, to catch your eye. And obviously they're measuring your eye movements, they're measuring how long it is that you look at a certain thing, what movement catches your eye. If they do something quickly in front of you, whether it catches your eye, what eye it catches in, where your gaze goes, how long you hold that look, how long you stay looking at that specific thing for. They're monitoring everything. They're learning through your eyes and your ears, what it is that they put in your environment that they can make you see. But they can also control your eyes. They also have the ability to control your eyes. So if they send in some kind of van with specific signage on it past you, and they're really desperate for you to see this because it's going to cause you particular annoyance, or to feel a certain way, then they have the ability through control of your optical nerve to direct your gaze to that specific place. It's why sometimes I walk about and I think I'm just going to look straight ahead above the heads of everybody, and I'm not going to concentrate on my environment, and there will be something that will make me gaze at certain things, and it's always at a very kind of opportune moment where there's something specific that they've placed in the environment, be it a registration plate that's kind of specific to me, or a signage on a vehicle, or a person wearing a certain kind of insignia or on their clothing or on their bag or something. They'll make sure that I see it, because they have total control over my optic nerve. Not only are they putting things into my brain to make me carry out specific actions, but they're putting things into the environment as well. It's like a total mind, like a mapping of your entire environment to see an algorithm of the percentage of times that you look in a certain direction, what you hear, what you pick up on, what things affect you, etc. And when I say about litter, when my dad died, my brother said that we should have the song at his funeral, Desperado by the Eagles. Now, they came back later when they came into my house and they said that Desperado was an anagram for raised a pedo, and that was specifically towards me. This is like 20 odd years later when they come into my house. My dad died in the early 2000s. He was quite young, he was only in his early 50s. But they said that, my brother had chose that song specifically because Desperado is an anagram of raised a pedo. Some fucking weird, whether they were mind controlling my brother to specifically choose that song or what, I don't know. I think the actual fact is that my brother probably chose that song because the lyrics kind of fitted somewhat the experience of my dad's death, my dad's life. And then they've kind of, spent the next 20 years coming up with things to put in my environment to say that, oh, everybody, look, we all knew you were a paedophile years ago. I'm not a paedophile, by the way. Let me just make that disclaimer. But, that's the narrative that they like to try and go with. Again, they put someone going past me just as I said that. So people will probably analyse my body language now and go, she looked a certain direction, it means she's a liar, that's what they do as well. They can kind of make your eye movements, force speech, etc. But this, going back to this Desperado thing, so for a long time, they haven't done it for a while actually, but one of the retards in the house that I live in, unfortunately I have to live amongst these retards, but he would drink Desperado. It's a type of lager as well, or beer, or some type of alcohol, but he would make sure that he drank that, so there would always be Desperado bottles and cans lying about, just to make me think of this constantly. Not really the alcohol choice of some fucking Dolly, I wouldn't have thought. I think it's quite more premium, that type of lager. I'm sure there's cheaper not that I'm saying anything against Dollies, being a fucking Dolly myself, but if I was still drinking I would be choosing the cheapest of alcohol. But they done it specifically because they knew that the meaning that I would associate that word Desperado with, and they try to kind of twist the word, they knew it had meaning, i.e. about my dad, and so they tried to twist it as though they've come up with this little fucking ridiculousness that it means raised a pedo. So I think everyone in my environment now thinks that I'm a paedophile. Also, if you look at my shorts, I'm not claiming that this person is a shill or a nonsense talker or full of shit, whatever. But that someone's wrote in one of my shorts when I filmed one of the people that live in my house, another of the retards that live in my house, I got his directed conversation, I caught it on my camera, and he was talking about something that I'd spoke about in a previous video. He was basically mimicking what I'd said in one of my videos, and I got it on tape, and I posted it as a short, and someone wrote, Desperado under it. So I'm not saying anything about them. I'm not saying that they are not who they claim to be, but yeah. It's just one of those words, that they use, and they'll do things like that in your environment constantly. And they have these people going out and they'll place things in the environment specifically, there'll be alcohol bottles and such in places that really people would only get to by car. You know, and if they were on foot, why would you be out walking miles from anywhere, really drinking cans of alcohol? But they make sure they have people going along and either throwing these bits of litter that are specific to you out of the car, or, you know, people walking with bags and placing them down. You know, it's ridiculous. You can kind of see things that are placed that just wouldn't occur in the environment naturally. But again, it's all to kind of get your attention, and all because they're monitoring what it is that your eyes can see, so they know what it is that you're paying attention to. You know that they know the things that they're putting in your environment that are affecting you, because they're monitoring all your movements and all your senses and your heart rate going up. They know that if you get to a specific you know, street corner that's maybe bad things have occurred before, you know, where they've maybe mobbed you or something, they'll know that your heart rate will go up, so they will try and do things there to again get you into a level of where they want you to be, get your kind of adrenaline pumping, you know. And they'll know they do this to try and get you to avoid places as well. So there's certain shops and supermarkets around here that they'll mob me in, and they'll get people to stand really close to me, kind of breathing down my neck, you know, and they want to see how I'll react, whether I'll avoid going to these places or whether I'll kind of speak out while I'm in these places. You know, they need to get a reaction, they need to see how it is that you react, and they're measuring all your vital signs, you know, not only where you're looking, you're hearing, what you can smell, but your kind of how tense you are, what level you're at in terms of adrenaline, you know. It's just a kind of experimental thing to try and get you out. So I would say the best idea is to be a nomad, to not live in a specific environment. You know, that's probably the best idea for anyone. But anyway, that's all I've got to say. They've got a big crowd of people coming at me now, so I'm going to finish off here. So take care. God bless. Lots of love. Bye bye.